All right, so we're going to do a little mini episode of the Nights On, Lights Off podcast. I'm Will of the Game Escape channel, and I am here with Jay Shy of Shin Megami Talks. And we are here tonight with a simple idea. We're going to go through video games with numbers in their title. We're going to start with 0, and we're going to work our way eventually to 100. And we're going to ask, I know it's crazy, but of all the games with this number in the title, which is the best? And as we were thinking about this, there is a lot to discuss. Some
There's a
numbers
lot.
have virtually nothing, and some numbers we could have, multi-episode podcasts going through all these games. But we're not going to do that. These are going to kind of be quick-hitting discussions. And Jay, let's start with 0.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw some games at you that I found with 0 in the title, and we'll see what you think. So the one that stood out to me, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of prejudiced, is F-Zero. And we could ask which one is the best. I was thinking initially of the SNES game.
Okay.
We we then have Zero Wing,
hmm
the side-scrolling shooter, Mega Man Zero, the I guess it was maybe the DS, Game Boy Advanced version of Mega Man, Perfect Dark Zero, Horizon Zero Dawn, Metroid Zero Mission, the Zero Escape trilogy of visual novels, and I had to put in Street Fighter Zero, and we could
Ah,
argue one,
Alpha.
two,
Right.
or yeah, Alpha 1, 2, or 3. So we are going to occasionally use the Japanese titles if there is a number in them. So, Jay, which of those games do you think would be the best with 0 in the title?
Mm, I've played them all, but I'm pretty biased because I love F Zero. Like F Zero is my jam. Like I F Zero on this. But you said Super Nintendo, and Super Nintendo is my one of my favorites. But I've grown to really enjoy that GameCube one.
The
I don't know.
GameCube one is pretty terrific. That's the what is it? F-Zero GX?
GX, I think it is. Yeah, GX. And I remember spending a lot of time on GX, and I spent a lot of time on the Super Nintendo version too. But there is a lot of memories that I have with the GameCube version as well. So it's really hard for me. I don't know how I don't know how you feel about that one, but that one's tough.
The GameCube one is, I think, one of the most impressive just futuristic racing games that I have ever played. I really do love that game. I gravitated towards the SNES version only because it was the first. It was so unique at the time, and it was one of those games that to me gave me that feeling of wow, I am now playing this next generation console. And in a way I think it holds up as I'm going to say arguably the best racer of the 16-bit home systems. Like I know people love Mario Kart. To me, F-Zero was a better game than Mario Kart. It felt faster, it felt more exciting. Um I don't know,
I think
Outrun,
I
like
think that the thing with Mario Kart and F Zero is that Mario Kart was more accessible. Like with F Zero, there was a lot of things you needed to learn. Like you needed to learn how to tilt the car to drift through angles. Like you
yep.
needed to know to let your you needed to know how to let your the machine kind of like glide. Because I know that there was a mechanic in the game where if you take your hand off the gas, the machine will kind of slide its way forward with the momentum that you had before. And you need to know all of those things. That game was very complex.
Mm. Yeah, and I again, it was something that like coming from the NES, that level of complexity and detail felt I mean, incredibly exciting and maybe even a little bit overwhelming. It's like I remember for when I first played it, like my first couple of playthroughs, I didn't quite get what it was asking me to do. Like it looked cool, but it took me a while to be decent at it. Um, so how about we come back to that question of whether we're going to go GX or the SNES version? Let's just comment on a couple of these other games. Like I would say of the Street Fighter Zero games,
Hmm.
the Alpha games. I mean, to me, Street Fighter Zero Two Alpha Two is my favorite. I think incredible art style, that Capcom mid '90s like Q sound music. To me, it's one of my favorite games that I still go back to on the Saturn, and it may be my favorite Street Fighter game of all time. I'd have to think about that, but off the top, it's the one that I've spent probably the most time with. Where do you fall as on Street
I
Fighter Zero?
I kind of have to agree with you. There's something about Alpha 2, well, Zero 2, that does something way different than what Zero, 1, and 3 did. 3 was fine. It wasn't bad, but there was something about Alpha 2's design that just felt, I guess for the word I'm looking for is polished, especially with the backgrounds. Was I'm trying to remember, was that in Alpha 2, what was Charlie's level in that game? Because I'm trying to remember if I'm thinking of the same level, but I know that there was a stage in Alpha 2, and I think it was Charlie that had the best stage layout.
I think that was like the hangar, like the airplane hangar, but it was a little bit more vertical.
Right.
You know,
I'm
uh, that's my memory of that. I might be wrong.
I'm
Uh,
I because I don't want to confuse it with the what I think is it I think it's X-Men versus Street Fighter is the one where he has the plane floating in the background. I don't know if that's Alpha 2 or if it's X-Men versus Street Fighter, but I remember there's a Charlie level that I really really adore, and every time I go there, I'm like, wow, this is so polished. A lot of the backgrounds are polished in Alpha 2. Alpha 3, it was, I don't know, it just felt, I guess the lack of better word is streamline, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I might
yeah.
be wrong, but there's something that Alpha 2 does. Zero 2. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Alpha 2. There's something about Zero 2 that just brings a different level of just polish than what Alpha 3 did.
Yeah. I mean I appreciate Zero Three only because like when you play it on the Saturn, um, it's it is technically impressive, and I felt they got the formula down. I guess streamlined is maybe a good term because I think they gave you so much more of what made Zero Two a great game, but somehow not everything clicked. I
Yeah.
It's a very weird thing. It's like, yes, I see what they're doing. I'm impressed, but I felt personally a lot of it was the music. Like the music wasn't as good. It was that same art style, but it didn't wow me in the way that Zero Two did. So yeah, there's just something off about it.
I think the only music that actually stands up to in Alpha 3 was Guy and Cody. I feel like their music was just perfect for that game.
Hmm.
Those are the only two.
Yeah, I like it, but when I go back to Zero Two, like you think about all the great stage music, like the Sakura stage,
Yeah,
with the
Sakura's
kind of
good.
the house and the kid in the background playing the Saturn, and that was cool.
Yep.
Let's go to a couple other ones here. Zero,
There was a Mega Man that you mentioned.
yeah, that was the Mega Man Zero series.
Yeah. I've only played
Um,
one.
yeah, I've played probably a few of them over the years. I got the kind of compilation, I think, for the Switch not too long ago. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Mega Man fan, so I can't really say that these were great.
Um, I've played Mega Man Zero. The thing is that you have to. to me, in my opinion, you have to play that in a completely different style. That's probably why, a lot of the times it's not great, I guess.
Hmm.
But I don't have very fond memories of Mega Man Zero, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna really alienate some Mega Man fans there. But yeah, I mean, like, basically, yeah, we played them. They were fun, but it didn't really hit home. What about Zero Escape Trilogy? A lot of people say that is a great, visual novel puzzle game series. I have it, but I haven't played it long enough to see if it's really great enough to be considered seriously as the great game with Zero in the title.
I've only I've only played, what was it? What was the first one? 999, was it? 99?
I
I've
believe so. Yeah,
I've only played a little bit of that one. I never spent too much time on it. So I
yeah.
have I
So
have nothing to say about it really.
I think ultimately, like, we're gonna have, if enough people see this, like a lot of corrections in the comments of, oh, no, hey, you missed this, or no, this game was great because. And I think we have to, as we kind of move forward, probably address that in like a separate episode. You
I can
know,
throw one into the pot.
all
How
right,
about Resident Evil 0?
I have not played that. I have
That's a
not played
that
it.
Resident Evil 0, I mean, a lot of people don't like that game. And I can attest to that. The whole two-player mechanic is, it kind of takes away the dread, even though the game tries to separate you most of the time.
Hmm.
You're not really scared of the game, to be honest with you, mostly probably because of the fact it's almost it almost trails down that same mode of been there, done that, kind of, because you played Resident Evil 1 and that one was so good. And then when you go to 0, it's like, oh, we're adding another person. It's not as terrifying anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, I have not played a single Resident Evil game.
No
And,
way.
yeah, it's one of those, like, might be a podcast topic, like gaps in gaming,
Mm,
but,
that's a good one.
there are a couple, like, for me, there are just certain themes or tropes that just never appeal to me. One is zombies, and
Uh,
the other is, like, Indiana Jones type treasure hunting, that whole genre.
so you know,
And so
so you never had a thing for like Uncharted, probably.
I have played that, but it didn't appeal to me because it was in that zone. Like, the Tomb Raider, never played Tomb Raider.
Oh wow, the original.
So, yeah, never played it.
Wow.
It's weird, you have some kind of, like, pop culture prejudices, and then, you just never go with the games for.
Nah. I always thought that everyone played Tomb Raider when, especially when it first came out, because Tomb Raider was, that wasn't that's like a gateway drug to like the PlayStation 1. What was it? Tomb Raider, um what was it? Warhawk, Twisted Metal,
Yeah.
and Crash Bandicoot. I feel like were the gateway drugs to the PlayStation 1 when it first
So
came out.
Tomb Raider, my friend got a PlayStation 1, pretty early on, and, his sister had Tomb Raider, and she was into it, but we would always wait for her to finish playing so we could play, WCW versus the
Oh, the
World.
world. I love that. I love to hate that game.
No, I legitimately loved it, like, it was the first of the AccuWare wrestling games
Uh-huh.
that I had played, and we were both big wrestling fans, and it hit on every note for us. So.
I probably came to the party a bit late because this was around the time when I first played that game. I never That was actually my first, no, my first wrestling game experience was actually Saturday Night Slam Masters.
Oh, well,
So
that's a classic in its own right. It's arguably not really a wrestling game, but
right, it's a fighting game, but
yeah.
I always thought wrestling games played like that, so I didn't have a good time with it at the time.
Well, my intro to wrestling was, of course, the NES WrestleMania game
That's
with
a good one.
the yeah, I mean, well, going back, I was like, "Oh, man, this was basic. I can't believe I rented this every weekend in 1989," or, whenever I was renting it, but again, I loved wrestling, so I wanted wanted to play Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and to me
Yeah.
that was the '80s, you know.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts? Have you played Horizon Zero Dawn? A lot of people love that.
I'm actually one of those people. It did not appeal to me when it came out. I really didn't care. I know it looks beautiful. It looks like it's a whole lot of fun to play. It just doesn't appeal to me for some reason, and I think it has something to do with it being open world. I don't know why. I used to love open world games, and then for some reason they just kind of died for me.
Yeah, I was the same way. It did not do it for me. I got it. I remember I got it relatively cheap. Like maybe it was a year after it came out. I got the Game of the Year edition for I think $10, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try it for $10. And I understand why people like it. I mean, it has beautiful visuals. The characters emote well. It's a new IP, strong female protagonist. I think it had a fairly in-depth crafting system and or at least item hunting and collection system. But I find that those Sony, like the Sony AAA game, they all kind of
Play the same.
have a certain play the same, have a certain feel to them,
Yeah.
and it's really not what I want from video games, period.
Right.
So I can't say that that's the best one with Zero.
I mean, you've
Um,
heard the kind of games that I purchase. They're ridiculously stupid and don't make sense. And I feel like a lot of those games that's, like Sony, they I feel like they take themselves too seriously. And I'm looking for more
yes.
goofy and fun, you know?
Yeah, I
Like
mean, like the Spider-Man games, the Spider-Man is not my like comic hero of choice,
Mhm.
but I appreciated those games. They were fun. But yeah, the rest of it, like God of War and what was the treasure hunting one that we just talked about?
Uncharted.
Uncharted,
Mhm.
The Last of Us, like they all just feel very samey to me for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, yeah. I
Like
agree.
Sony's got their formula. Um,
Yes.
Metroid Zero Mission, if I
Oh,
recall, that is a Game Boy Advanced
yes, it
version of the
is.
original Metroid,
Yes.
which great game. I
Yep.
don't know. Like, I think we're gonna have a lot of these as we go through the list where they're remakes of other games without numbers in the title.
Mhm.
Uh, but Metroid's a great game, so I don't know. Do we give it serious consideration?
Um, it's it's good. It's very good. It's one of those games that leaves a lasting impression when you play it. So I really don't have anything negative to say about that game. I think this episode is going to be somewhat biased towards certain games compared to new ones, and I because we just went from what were we talking about before? Spider-Man and all that
Spider,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And then we go to, oh, Metroid Zero was great.
Yeah, I mean, hey, fair enough. I think this is why people, like make an argument in the comments. Like, why are
Right,
we being unfair when we say
right, right, right,
Horizon
right.
Zero? And I think that's fun, and maybe it will get us to go back and play some of those games.
That's true.
So,
I mean, yeah, I agree.
the only other two on the list here, Perfect Dark Zero and Zero Wing. I can say about Perfect Dark Zero,
Mhm.
um, I like the original Perfect Dark game quite a bit.
Yeah, I did too.
And to me, it was a better GoldenEye, and when I got to Perfect Dark Zero, which I believe was a launch title. Was that the launch title on the Xbox
It
360
wasn't a
or was
it wasn't a launch title, but it did come out early enough to be like those early run 360 games.
yeah, I mean, to me I thought it was fun. It was more of the same. It didn't hit me the way it hit me back on the N64 where I felt like, wow, this is special.
Yeah.
So I can't really say that it's great. And then Zero Wing is a pretty standard side-scrolling shooter of the era. Not
Yep.
a bad game, pretty
No.
fun, but I don't know if it's in the greatness discussion.
No, it's not. It's fun, but it's not into greatness. With Perfect Dark, Zero. Perfect Dark was great, and Perfect Dark Zero felt like it was it felt dated for the era when it came out. I think that was the biggest problem with Perfect Dark Zero. A lot of people have already played games like Perfect Dark Zero, but they did it better. And um, when you played game, uh, I I remember when I played it, I thought it was just very mediocre. When I played it, I didn't think it was bad, but I knew at the time everyone was talking about Half Life when that game came out, and it was Half Life this, Half Life that, and people were really anticipating Gears of War at the time. So it was like the new thing.
Well, I would agree with that. I think that's fair. So I think where we are, the kind of the question is F-Zero, Metroid Zero Mission, Street
Hmm.
Fighter Zero Two.
Yep.
Um, which of the three can we eliminate right off the bat?
Hmm. Personally, I would eliminate. What was the last one? Because I remember F
So,
Zero and I remember Street Fighter. What was the other one?
Metroid Zero Mission.
I would take off Street Fighter.
Take off Street Fighter. Okay,
I would
interesting.
take. I would, but that's for me. I would take off Street Fighter. What would you take off?
I would take off Metroid only because I personally had more fun with Zero Two.
Hmm.
So, and my memories of Zero Mission are fairly limited.
Okay.
So I don't know that I could make an argument for that one.
I think the even though I have more memories with Street Fighter Zero, I think I enjoyed the exploration of Metroid more. Even though I don't remember a lot of the things, I do remember it being really fun to get through. Um, that's for sure. I and when it comes to F Zero, F Zero is always going to be on top for me.
Yeah. So I mean,
Nothing.
I think there, like we've determined, F-Zero is
F
on top.
Yeah, F Zero is the winner.
So do we go F-Zero on the SNES or do we go GX?
I would go SNES to be honest with you. Well,
Okay.
if I had to pick, I would definitely always most definitely pick F-Zero on the NES more, even though I did have extensive playtime with F-Zero GX. There's something that I enjoy more in F-Zeros on the SNES on we're gonna call F-Zero Prime, the original on the
Okay.
SNES, right? We're gonna call it F-Zero Prime. Because I can't call it F-Zero Zero, and I can't call it F-Zero One, because that'll be stupid, but we'll say the thing with F Zero Prime is that there is a mixture of complexity and simplicity to it that makes it interesting that anybody can play it, and there's a nostalgia there. With GX, I have nostalgia for it, but I remember there were moments of that game that just frustrated the hell out of me,
Yes.
especially the arcade mode. Ugh.
I will agree with you on that. I mean, I think to this day I have some difficulties on some stages of GX. It
Yeah.
was very, very frustrating back in the day. So I will agree, and we will give it to F-Zero on the SNES as, in our humble opinion, the best game with zero in
Zero.
the title. And now it's up to you guys to go into the comment section and tell us if you agree. And if we're wrong, what game would you pick and why are we wrong?